All right, very good morning, everyone. You just heard three of the HUPO presidents, Mark Baker, Mike Schneider, and Steve Pennington, talking about different key activities which proteomics community is taking forward, and also the deliberations, discussions, brainstorming is how to make the technologies more robust as well as more user friendly so that we can start making more clinical translation of the various proteomics based discoveries, and those could reach out to the patients and for the broader community. So a lot of activities are happening in this particular area, both from the point of development of new tools and softwares, as well as different type of clinical assays and making the more translational activities. Now, on this slide, what we have been discussing in the previous lectures about one of the key technology, which is mass spectrometry, how it can be utilized for protein identification and protein quantification at the proteome scale. We are not looking at one or two protein, but we are looking at all the proteins possible from a given sample type. So in this slide, we have been discussing about different quantitative proteomics approaches and label-based and label-free type of detection system. So continuing from that, today I'll be talking to you more about interactions and network analysis, because all the data which we have generated so far from the mass spectrometry based workflows is leading us towards understanding the biology, right? And that's where our major focus has been in the previous lecture about how to take the quantitative proteomics data and move toward the pathways and network analysis. In this slide, what I thought today to introduce you a new technique, which is label-free biosensors, and talk to you about how these type of interactomics based technology is becoming very powerful to understand different type of biomolecular interactions and leading you to understand your pathways and the drug discovery workflows in much more powerful manner. So we are going to cover some of these topics today, and then you will have a recap or the short refresher on the string analysis, which was already discussed last time, and that will be utilized for today's quiz, which will be based on the string data analysis. So in addition to that, we are going to introduce you to some concepts of Human Protein Atlas and NextProt, and those will be utilized for the next quiz and assignment activity from the next class. So that's the plan for today's lecture. We have been discussing broadly quantitative proteomics technique, looking at different type of amino acid based labeling or N-terminal peptide based labeling, with some focus on TMT and iTrack. And last class we talked about the stable isotope labeling by amino acid in cell culture, the in vivo labeling methods, where this can become more powerful as compared to the in vitro labeling methods. So those being discussed, and we have, I think, by now got a good understanding of the growing field of proteomics, the basic concepts of mass spectrometers, and you have been exposed to different softwares and open access tools, which now you can take forward. If you have been given the mass spectrometry raw data files, you can take those data forward and start making sense of that data by doing both primary and secondary data analysis, followed by different type of pathways and network analysis. So this is where we are on this course right now. Next couple of lectures are going to be introduction to different type of technologies. Like today, I'll be talking to you about label-free biosensors. Next class, we'll talk about targeted proteomics workflows. I'll give you at least some idea for the sample preparation. This becomes very biological, but I don't want to make it very core biology, given the broad student audience from different disciplines here. Still, I think it's important for you to learn that. And then we'll talk about gel-based proteomics and at least some discussion based on that. So this is where we are in the course today to move forward and give you some flavor of a new technology, which is the label-free biosensor. So let's talk about that. And again, we have been discussing about label-based and label-free in context of mass spectrometer. Now, the same concepts also revolve around label-based and label-free for different type of interaction analysis. Now here, when I say label-based, essentially we are referring to the protein arrays and microarray-based platforms, which primarily involve different type of labeling reagents. And label-free biosensors are essentially a different type of biosensor, like surface plasmon resonance, SPR imaging, biolayer interferometry, different type of label-free biosensors. So, but the label-based and label-free in some way remain same, whether you talk about IE-TRAC and ICAT and SciLac as label-based. And we had talked to you about label-free quantification of mass spec as well as the data independent acquisition based strategies. So label-based techniques, in general, like if you see any given lab, like people are doing Western blots, people are able to scan the images which are having different type of fluorophores, Psi3 labeled, Psi5 labeled, Alexa fluor labeled, different type of reagents which are being used to tag your proteins, and then you want to scan those and visualize those. Those are all label-based techniques, and those are quite widely used. Most of the labs are using these available reagents and instruments. So therefore, you have access to these type of workflow very easily. Nevertheless, whenever you are introducing a label on any type of molecules, you are going to have some interference from the tag or the chemical which you are introducing over there. And then it may not always be very easy if you are thinking about looking at two biomolecule and their interaction, because one is already having some sort of tag or label. So how native it is to look for the biomolecular interactions in this manner. And also when you look at label-based technologies, then you are doing the measurements, which is only going to give you signal at the end of the reaction. Like for example, in IE-TRAC or ICAT, when we saw, at the end only you can look at reporter ions, or for that matter in the microarrays, when you have to scan your slides, or in the Western blots when you scan your image, then only you can see that what kind of signal you have detected. So it's only endpoint measurement. In between the whole experiment, you have no control to know about what is going on. Is my labeling good? Is my biological system is making any differential expression, any change happening? You have no idea for any of those. So other possibility could be label-free technologies, which can label-free. When we say, it means we are looking at two molecules, how they interact, and all you're looking at how native they are actually interacting by trying to measure their physical interactions and physical properties. Like what is when two molecules come close interaction, what is the mass change happens? What kind of dielectric property gets changed? So you are not adding a tag to measure the signal, but rather you are looking at the change in the physical properties of reflectance change or conductance change based on the mass and dielectric property, these kind of parameters. So in some way you are able to avoid the tag related issues which you otherwise encounter in the label based methods, and it also allows you to look for the real time measurements. So it means like when you're starting the experiments, you can see like how molecules are interacting. Is the interaction really strong? Is that weak interaction? If interaction is not at all happening, can you change the condition? Can you change the temperature? Can you change the buffer condition? Can you add something else so that now the interaction could actually be more favorable? All that is possible in the real-time interaction kinetics measurements when we do this type of label-free biosensors. In general, they're less sensitive than the reagent which you use for the fluorescent signals, and they're of course more costly experiments. So these are kind of broad perspective about label-based and label-free technique. Let me take now your viewpoints so far about your understanding, starting from, let's say, think about mass spectrometers based, label-based and label-free, and now we are talking about label-based, label-free for the interaction analysis. In both the context, the concept of label-based and label-free remains the same. Of course, platforms are different. So let me take some comments and questions from the students and ask about your opinion. What type of proteomics approach would you like to take forward for your project type? Would you prefer label-based method or label-free quantitative method? Let's take some comments. Please raise your hand. Or let me ask or talk to some people to whom I have not been able to talk earlier. So Dhanush and Jyoti, would you like to add something, your understanding about label-free quantitative proteomics and label-based quantitative proteomics? and which one would you prefer and why? Let's start with Jyoti. I hope students are around there. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
All right. Is the question very tough or too easy to talk? Aparna, give me a minute. I think let's also talk to some more people. Dhanush, can I speak to you like rather than typing? Please unmute and talk. Jyoti and Dhanush. Please keep your systems ready and active, because these are live classes. Otherwise, I can just send you my video links, I don't have to spend time on present in the live class to talk to you and interact with you. If you are not there and if your systems are not working. Anjali, please go ahead and talk.
Sir, so now that we have studied about both label-free and label-based in the quantification part, quantification of proteins part, and also the interaction part. So, according to me, like we have discussed before, as you have told us, that label-free and label-based both has its own pros and cons. So, if I start with label-free method, there are two ways to do that. One is peak intensity and spectral counting, like two things to carry it forward. So I think I would choose that approach better because it is first of all good for more samples, and it's like more flexible in terms of label base about the quantification of proteins part. But now as we can see in the interaction part, I think I'm not able to understand it properly, but for my understanding, I think I would choose label based techniques since um, M- maybe because the reagents are common and everything, like because yeah.
All right. So you have been giving the two different technology platform discussion. One is about mass spec, where you mentioned you would choose label-free
Yeah.
quantitative. And for the biosensors and interactomics-based investigation, you would prefer label-based system because those reagents are more commonly available. So let me not give my viewpoints right now. I think these are good viewpoints from independently from your side. Let's talk to Anjali what she thinks.
uh, Sir, I've already done, I think, for the point now.
Who was speaking? Jyoti was speaking or Anjali was speaking?
Anjali Arya was it? I am.
All right, sorry. So I thought Jyoti was speaking. Jyoti,
No, no problem.
Jyoti, what happened? Are you still there or you have some issues? Devanshi, what is your viewpoint? Do you agree with Anjali or?
Hello, sir. Good morning. Hello.
Yes.
Sir, I lost my connectivity in between. So,
Jyoti, we are asking about label-free and label-based quantitative proteomics. What is your viewpoint? Which one would you like to use?
so I would like to use label-based quantification method.
What does that mean? What is label-based quantification and why would you like to use that?
Sir, because mm, it will define, give more better results by labeling a particular peptide.
What are the commonly used labeling-based quantitative methods?
So, like a use of isotopes, different.
Name some techniques. I think we have been discussing about it. Label-based quantitative proteomics. What are those techniques? Some names. And Nilesh could help you if you are forgetting some names. Nilesh, are you there? Can you name few techniques of the label-based mass spec quantitative proteomics?
Yes, sir.
Okay, please name some techniques.
stable isotope labeling, where we use amino acids.
That's one correct thing. Anything else?
Sir, I'm not remembering name, but where we use particular isotopes in media to tag peptides of in vivo labeling.
Okay, name some in vitro labeling as well. Or somebody else can help you. Vaswaraju, Jishnu, do you want to say? We'll mention some of the in vitro labeling methods. All right, Aparna, what is, I think you wanted to speak earlier as well. So what is your viewpoint about label-free versus label-based, and in context of both MS and the interaction techniques?
When we say about the interaction techniques, I would probably prefer the label-based techniques because we would know at least what one of the interacting molecule is by use of labels. But I do not completely understand how the label-free technique would work in such a case to study interactions. Like we can study the dialectic interactions, but I do not know how would that work. Because we should already know about all the kinds of interactions beforehand before we can go for the label free technique.
Regarding MS-based?
For the MS field, I kind of like both the techniques. That would depend more upon what exactly I want to know. So, suppose if I want to, I already know the proteins which I need to study for a particular disease, then there will be very few protein samples that I would like to study. Then I would go for the label based. But in case I don't know what protein that I actually need to study, then I would probably go for the label free in MS based analysis.
All right, Parth, you want to add something?
Yes, sir. So even I completely agree with Anjali and Aparna that it completely depends upon what part you want to explore. So if I want to explore the quantification part where I want to see the gradual changes according to the conditions, I would go with label-free technique because it would help me in better understanding of the dynamics of the regulation, where we can go for peak intensities and spectral counting. That would give a more clear picture. Whereas if we want to understand the interactive part where the players are interacting with each other and what are the pathways in which they are included, so that would we would go with a label based technique because that would give a more clear picture. So depending upon the type of analysis we want to go, we would go for either of them, but none of them would give both the advantages.
All right, good. So just to let's conclude what we discussed. Essentially, we are talking about two different type of technology platforms. One, we talked about mass spectrometry based quantitative proteomics. In that context, we have talked about label based in vitro in vivo labeling methods and label free methods. Your answers are correct that context will decide that what type of platform should be chosen. But as we have discussed that if you are doing very controlled experiments with very few biological replicates, I think label based can be better approach to look for better quantitative signals and fold changes of the proteome. Whereas if you are looking at large number of samples, clinical projects over the very long time period or different cell culture experiments over the long period, it will be better to do for the label free quantitation because every sample could be processed, acquire data, and you can generate those spectral libraries which can be utilized over the time period, and different type of questions could be addressed from that data set. So it is context dependent, but still context will depend on the type of project and the type of sample, the questions, objectives, and what kind of biological query you have. So all that in that context. Now, the second part, which we have just started discussing about, is the some of the interaction techniques, and of course you are not completely exposed to talk with authority on that area right now. Idea is that if you're looking at interactions with the signal-based methods, like looking at different type of fluorescence methods, which is commonly used in the microarray-based platforms. That is also a very powerful approach of detecting signal. At the same time, even label-free concept is also utilized to look for interaction analysis, and that is uh, slightly more powerful than the label based in this case, because when you are looking at label free, it means you are trying to not introduce any tag or chemicals on the protein. Therefore, you are looking at really the most possible protein and drug interaction and protein protein interaction without modifying them or changing them in any manner. And also you are able to track the entire experiment as you go along. So you'll be better exposed for these concepts as we will be talking more in the subsequent classes. But today let me just take you and give you some flavor of the label-free interaction techniques and little bit more focus about talking about how different type of label-free biosensors being used to do the interaction analysis. And we are discussing these keeping in viewpoint about different type of pathways and network which you are trying to understand a biological system. You would like to know that for a given unknown protein, what is the function of that protein, and you are looking at possible interactors of that protein. Or in a given pathway, you want to now inhibit a protein with the given drug molecules, and you are looking at again biomolecular interaction, protein drug interaction. So again, these kind of techniques are very much in the flow of what we are discussing towards your biological question, how you can take quantitative data from mass spec, generate the data, analyze the data, now decipher the pathways, interaction network analysis, and now look for the possible interactors and possible drugs which can bind to these. So there are different type of label-free technologies which are emerging, right? As you can see, the quite a huge number of platforms are keep emerging. For example, there are many variations of surface plasmon resonance, like SPR, surface plasmon resonance, or SPR imaging, or nanohole arrays. Ellipsometry-based techniques are there. Interference-based techniques, especially spectral reflectance imaging biosensors are there. Electrochemical impedance spectroscopy aptamer arrays are there. AFM, atomic force microscopy, enthalpy arrays, scanning Kelvin nanoprobes, microcantilever. Many type of label-free sensors are also being utilized to measure the different type of biomolecular interactions. Now the powerful part here is that these type of technologies are looking at real-time manner, like the unlike the fluorescence-based study, the major drawback over there is that after doing the whole day of experiment, whether you do Western blot or microarray, at the end of the day when you are conjugating your reaction with the secondary antibody, which is labeled with Psi3 or Psi5, only then you can see signal. In this case here, when two molecules are interacting, you are trying to monitor their kinetics in the very dynamic manner, so in the real time way, so you have full control on the experiments. This is the most powerful part of the label free biosensors and interaction measurements. Now by doing these kind of experiments, what you're also trying, you are trying to decipher a lot of kinetic data. You are looking at on rate of binding, off rate of binding, what is the KD value of these binding. You are trying to develop the models and the wiring diagrams based on these information. And that's where a lot of systems biology related problems and data is actually being understood from this type of data as well. The different type of label-free techniques are still under various stages of development. Some of these are still quite new and quite being taken forward. I'm just giving you one of the examples to start with. Let's say carbon nanotubes and nanowires, right? So think about this type of nanowires. On that, if you have an antibody which you have conjugated, and this antibody, think about maybe for the SARS-CoV-2, right? Or for another virus, right? This antibody is going to recognize that protein of a given virus. Now, if that protein comes, this particular antibody is going to bind to that protein, right? So think about the spike protein of SARS-CoV-2, and you have that antibody against that. And when it binds here, then you see the change in the conductance because antigen-antibody interaction is happening. Therefore, you will see some change in overall conductance on the nanowire sensor, and that conductance change could be measured over the time period. That's what you are going to measure in this type of phenomenon. Now, this is having why I'm showing this example. This was one of the good example which was published earlier in Nature Biotechnology, and then there were some follow-up studies in PNAS where they showed in the previous type of SARS infections that on the airports when there are metal detectors there, If we can have these type of biosensors where these antibodies against those viral proteins could be conjugated, when you scan those individuals who are coming from the flights, if there are some viral particle and proteins, they might interact and show this kind of binding, and you can actually segregate those individuals for the further testing. So think about a technology like this, which is based on antigen antibody interactions, could be also utilized towards this kind of biodefense and biosecurity type of issue. So this is one of the very promising example to start with. But the very commonly used label-free biosensor is surface plasmon resonance, SPR. Now what happens here? You have a prism, a light source, a gold slide. So this is a gold plate, metallic plate. Now on which, let's say, your antibodies you have printed. Then when you are flowing your proteins of interest from the flow cell, when protein is going to come and bind with this antibody, it is going to show you some change in the overall reflectance of the medium. And that is what you're going to try to monitor, that when you are exciting with the light the surface of the gold, some plasmons are being generated, and now when there is a binding of the antibody antigen reaction happening, you are seeing some change in the reflectivity. And you're going to monitor that what is the change in the SPR reflectivity happens when you are flowing your samples of interest in the real-time manner by using the label-free detection system. So you are really trying to monitor that in the real-time manner how a binding is happening. When you are flowing your analytes, is that going to bind with this antibody or not? Now, to monitor this kind of reaction, you are looking at different aspect of the bindings. First, initially when you flow your buffer, that will give you the stable baseline. And then as soon as your, let's say this is antibody and your protein is binding over there, then there will be, so these two biomolecules are being interacting now. So now you will see some change in the affinity, right? So that's now this becomes on rate or association rate. So K small a. This is the place when you start seeing the binding is happening in the real-time manner in the label-free biosensor, because the change in the SPR reflectivity happening now. After some time, when you keep flowing the buffer, the binding will start getting dissociated, and that's what you will see in the SPR sensorgram here, which is showing the dissociation, or the molecules are coming off. That is known as the off rate or K off. And after the complete reaction is complete, you will keep flowing your buffer so that all these molecules come off, and then you add some mild acid solution so that everything comes out of it, and the same gold slide can be used for the next reaction. So what you are measuring in the real-time manner, you are looking at response unit of the signal, and that is known as the SPR sensorgram or surface plasmon resonance sensorgram. Advantages are quite a bit, like you are not doing any labeling of your protein to look for this kind of interaction. It can be antibody antigen interaction, it can be just protein interactions broadly, it can be protein drug interaction. Any of those, same concept will be applied, and therefore whatever artifacts which you introduce because of labeling, those can be avoided with the label-free biosensors. It is a direct platform because it can measure the binding of the actual analytes. And it's what you are monitoring. You're monitoring how the on rate happens, like the binding association, how the binding reaches to the saturation level, how it takes off, and it comes out of the system. That is the off rate or dissociation constant dissociation rate. And then finally, you're going to measure the overall KD, K capital D, to look for the overall binding dissociation constants. So this is not an endpoint assay. You are not just measuring at the end of the reaction the signal or the fluorescence, but rather you are monitoring the entire reaction in the very dynamic manner, and you are generating these kind of data set of K small a on rate, K small d off rate, and K capital D dissociation constant. Another technique which looks into more high throughput manner of similar concept of looking at biomolecular interaction, but not only one protein and one drug at a time, but rather look at now in the high throughput manner for thousands of protein and looking at interactions of different other interacting molecules or the drug molecules. This is known as SPR imaging. So here what you're looking at, you are trying to take the entire gold slide area, like that entire chip what we have seen. That entire area, if you think about, you have thousands of proteins printed on that. You are trying to measure that entire area by looking at some of the CCD devices to generate the image of that entire area, something like this. And now that entire gold surface is going to show you these type of pseudo images of these spots. and you are looking at the same concept of high throughput binding, but now you are looking for many spots and their interactions in the real-time manner. So something along these lines, we were also trying to develop some technologies, a couple of years ago when I was doing my postdoc. An idea was to take this type of array-based platforms and put them on the gold ship and try to develop the SPR imaging-based system so that we can do high throughput interaction-based work. And this is the prism here, and this is the surface when you are going to put your gold slide. This is where the proteins are being printed. Now you put the flow cell, you are now injecting your analyte, and that is going to come here and start showing some binding. So let me show you, this is actually prototype development. Let me show you a clip, which is also handmade only, and shows you the prototype development of these bindings. So on top of the gold slide, which is having the proteins immobilized, now you are keeping the flow cell. You start introducing your analyte which you want to test out, and that's going to come from these flow cells, and you can test multiple antibodies or multiple protein interaction in the same one after the other. After one reaction is complete, you can wash it off and you can do the second reaction now to happen. And what you are looking at, in the real-time manner, you are going to look for the binding, how these bindings are happening for that one reaction. Initially there will be stable baseline, and after some time when there will be on rate, you will start seeing the some binding to be happening. And now we are looking at in the high throughput manner for thousands of protein in this particular case. So in this, what you generate here, this is the SPR image from that particular hundreds of protein which you have printed on the chip. And then you have to define the regions of interest, which is this particular spot is the proteins of interest, and these are the background, which is the gold slide, which is what is there, and some buffer and all will be coming on top of that. So you can generate the pseudo, these blue dots, which will be used for background subtraction. And this one you have to enlarge it to make sure that it fits well to the spots, and the spots boundary could be defined. Then only you can extract the data from there to see like what was the binding data which you can obtain from those. So a lot of detail goes into looking into this type of data, which is of course much different than the mass spectrometry based data. Here you have to look for the buffer concentration, the temperature change, and when you subtract your background, the data will look much different than when you was without background subtraction. The SPR based interaction analysis gives you a lot of information, not only about the overall how the binding was there, binding happened, yes or no, not only that response, but also tells you like how fast a binding happened, how slow a binding is happening. Like when you are comparing different drug molecules, think about when you are having a headache, right? You want crocin, paracetamol, these kind of drug. What you want is very quick relief, right? You want something to happen, very fast reaction to happen. Whereas when you are taking a sleeping pill, you want to work it slowly and you want to have it for the longer stretch of time. So you do not want, now you understand, like both the drugs have to bind to the right receptors to do the reaction, but one need to bind very fast and one need to slowly, come out and show the, dissociation with very slow off rate. So therefore, every drug discovery aspect works with very different type of these reactions of on rate and off rate, and optimizing them becomes very important for the pharma sector. SPR imaging data processing, again, you are looking at first different signals coming from different areas of the spots. You do the y-axis transformation, then everything comes on the same scale. And then you can start comparing those data to look into your dissociation constant, which will be off rate divided by on rate. And you are going to try to generate these type of models for the fitting based on your these initial interaction studies. So I'm not going in great detail about various type of SPR based applications, but I'm just going to give you quick flavor of how these type of detection platforms are being used for the actual applications, right? So there are different type of applications where these type of things can be used when we are talking about taking our proteomics based workflows forward. Many times, you want to understand why this protein biomarker which you have identified is very important. You want to understand which are other molecules that are interacting with this protein biomarkers of your interest. What kind of, the low molecular weight drug discovery process can be optimized? What type of biosimilar products are there? What type of concentration analysis immunogenicity testing, thermodynamic analysis. Many of these things are the data which generates from proteomics has to be further understand and characterized using these type of label-free biosensors. Just at IIT Bombay, when I was also operating as in charge of this facility of SPR and SPR imaging systems, we have different type of applications, as you can see, like the users and people who come from different type of studies. Protein small molecule gives the maximum, protein drug interaction is getting the maximum usage, whereas many other applications, including some very crazy experiments like how a bacteriophage virus could actually interact with the E. coli bacteria. Think about even those experiments on the chip. And of course, you have all type of biomolecular interactions which can be measured on these type of label-free biosensors. I'm just going to illustrate you very quickly, very few more examples of some of the faculty members who are doing some experiments in our department and chemistry and chemical engineering around here to use these type of interaction platforms. In this case, they were looking at on the bare gold chip how calixarin, a molecule, could interact with copper percolate. And in different replicates, they are looking at how close the KD values are coming, and that is quite reproducible. In another experiment, another faculty member is looking at how the myoglobin spiked the serum sample when you have a serum sample in which you have added myoglobin. And now if you are trying to measure the antibody of anti-myoglobin, can that bind to the myoglobin present in the serum sample, and what kind of concentration can be determined from that experiment. Other experiment is looking at protein and carbohydrate interaction. So here in this case, we have glucose and galactose molecules, how they bind with the glucose binding proteins, and these kind of interaction being measured. Other experiment here is looking at how the protein is binding with other type of proteins, and in this case, the user has brought the data to us, which was also they have run in Australia earlier, and then those kind of data to be compared. This is from one of the biotech company. Protein small molecule interaction is quite heavily used. In this case, the 27 kilodalton protein with the small organic compounds. Again, what you're looking at on rate, off rate, KD values, experiment to experiment reproducibility. Concept of SPR remains same, but applications you can think about how many different type of applications are possible. So there are different need to generate these type of technologies and take it forward. As you will understand that still the field of proteomics requires a lot of new technology development and areas where we can see how best we could take our leads forward towards much larger system, because there are technologies available which can do one molecule and one interaction at a time. But how to take some of these technologies forward to look into the high throughput interaction, right? So again, the field of proteomics is still emerging because the concept of doing omics-based testing, omics-based investigation remains still pretty new. And our technologies like core biochemical technologies from chromatography to the biosensors, they primarily rely on looking at a specific protein and a specific interactions. So how to make them more high throughput towards looking at a scale which we are talking, like you identified thousands of protein from the mass spec based experiment. Can you now look at those at least 500 proteins and their interaction in a more robust manner, more high throughput manner? So this part I will try to cover you as we go along more in the latter part of the course, when I'll already speak to you about microarrays, and then I think this context will be much more relevant to discuss. I think today I'll skip this part of discussing about label-free high throughput biosensor, because that is going to be slightly more complex a topic right now to understand. But as we will go in the course, I'll also introduce you with the concepts of protein microarrays, and then we'll again bring back the concepts of high throughput label-free biosensors, which can be utilized with the label-free technologies with the microarray concept also. So idea is you keep thinking about what data we are generating from our the mass spec, that is leading you towards some hypothesis building. You're trying to understand a biological system. You're trying to understand a given pathway. You're trying to look at how my proteins of interest are forming a network. And those analysis which you are being exposed right now with the the software like Reactome and String, those things are giving you these type of clues. And then you build those hypotheses. To test those hypotheses again experimentally, you will need technologies like microarrays and SPR and other type of label-free biosensors. So that we will keep talking. I'm just trying to broaden your scope and vision of understanding how the proteomic technologies are going to be integrated and going to be utilized together to make sense of the data, right? So today, after this session now, Abhilash is going to refresh you about a string analysis, which will be used for your today's quiz as well. And then we are going to have some short exposure and session about human protein atlas and the NextProt, how these type of platform you can utilize for your understanding and for any given system. And we are giving you exposure of many of these tools right now because slowly we want you to become more comfortable knowing about them, and eventually we are going to give you some data set which you are going to analyze yourself, and you are going to make sense of that data, make some hypothesis from that data, and then going to make a presentation about what you have done to reach out to that analysis and what type of learning which you have from that data, what kind of hypothesis you can make to address that type of budget question. So all of this, this small training which we are giving you in every lecture and every session is going to be utilized for your broader project which you are going to do independently yourself. Of course, we'll be there to mentor you and help you in troubleshooting part, but you are going to utilize those independently and bring your perspective to the projects. That's all from my side here right now. Let me take any question if you have. And also in the meantime, let Abhilash get ready to share his screen for string analysis. Yes, Anjali, please go ahead.
Sir, you said something about HT analysis. I could not follow it. Can you please repeat that part?
Human protein atlas, HPA, right? HPA you said?
No. HT analysis in the when we were talking about SPR, I guess.
HT is high throughput because what we are talking about, not one protein, one drug, but we are looking at thousands of protein and possible analytes which can interact with those. So high throughput, HT, high throughput biochemistry.
Okay.
Yeah, because the proteomics, everything what we are looking at the large scale, we are looking at thousands of scale, and that's what we are trying to achieve. Can we look at proteome-wide screening, proteome-wide understanding of a given system? Okay, all right, good. Okay. So, any other question from any student? All right. In the meantime, Abhilash, please get started on the string analysis. Aparna, you have any more questions?
Yes.
So the two hybrid system would come under which kind of technique among these?
When we talk about broadly all the interactomics based technologies, and EAST2 hybrid had started the entire field of interactomics to say, but given that it can have a very much limitation because you're going to use mainly the yeast system, it has to be also you're going to look at the bait and prey interactions over there, and the lot of false positive comes out of that. As a result of that, more high throughput approaches have come forward, including microarrays and label free biosensor. But this part we are going to cover mostly in the post mid-sem when I'll talk to you about all possible interactomics technologies. Okay.
Yes, sir. And so the SPRI technique in which the high throughput technique, so the different lanes, for the different lanes, we are actually taking different samples for each lane so that we can do the detection parallelly.
You're talking for SPR or you're talking for what?
For SPRI, in which you showed different lanes for.
Right.
So for each lane, we are taking different samples, or is it the same sample that we are running through each lane, and there's some different antibodies in each lane?
Correct. So that image which I showed you, that is having all the different proteins, right? So or antibody. Let's say you are printing 500 antibodies on the chip, and now you are looking at one protein at a time. That one protein that interacts with which antibody? Or let's say you are looking at 500 proteins and you are flowing a drug, and you want to see that drug is going to bind to which of the possible proteins. Let's say you are screening for all kinases, and you are looking for a kinase inhibitor. So kinase inhibitor being flown right from the, as an analyte from your flow cell, and on the chip you get all the kinases. Now you're looking at where that binding is happening, where the inhibition is happening. So it means one sample at a time you are running, but you are measuring interaction of all possible protein which you are interested in. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
All right, good. Abhilash, do you want to first talk about string and then you can briefly give the overview of your pathways?
Okay.
So I hope students have the file for today's quiz analysis, right? For the string data,
Yes,
and
yes, we have already shared the file. Yeah, we have already shared. They can download the file and they can perform with me also.
so please start
Yes, so
practicing all of you for the string
yes,
analysis, which we ask quiz shortly today.
Sir,
And
the
most of the
file is
question will be from
PPIN
the same
one.
file. Yes, yes, the same one. Yeah.
The PPIN one.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so in last session we already showed you the string analysis. Now we'll go slightly deeper and we'll try to cover some more aspects on string. And if you are not from a biology background but still you want to interpret the data in a biology way, how we can make the clusters, how can we get the results from the string. Okay, so for that, for string analysis we need the protein list, right? So this protein list comes from the LFQ data or from TMT or any labeled mass spectrometric data. Or if you have done a kind of system biology experiment where you have a number of proteins, you can take the list from there. So here is my significant protein or my protein of interest that I want to look, and I want to interpret the biology from here on. So I'll just paste the link, the protein list. Okay, and before that, make sure you have chosen the multiple proteins. Okay, since we are pasting multiple number of proteins, choose that. And organism you have to mention. So I work on human samples, so it is Homo sapiens, right? So we'll search that. At the same time, it will give you the mapping. So I edit the input files were mostly the UniProt IDs. So it convert them into gene names, and also it gave the brief functions of the individual proteins. Okay, so you can see the which protein it is and what is the function it does. All the information you'll get from here. Then just continue. While you'll continue, you'll get a protein-protein interaction network. So here I have chosen those proteins which are coming significant from the LFQ data. Here we got the network. Okay, so in network we have to make sure that in the setting we have chosen the confidence. Okay, so this confidence it will give the thickness of the edges, and that will have a data support, already published literature support from support. Yeah. So now if you see the protein or if you see the network, so here you see each protein, these proteins, the SRSF7 or SF3A, these are the individual nodes, and these nodes are connected by some edges, and you can see the thickness of these edges that shows the confidence of the protein-protein interaction or the interaction between these two. The interaction between SF3A1 and DDX3 is definitely more as compared to the SRSF7 that we can interpret from this interaction node or network. So the edges, the nodes, we can see here and we can interpret how strong they are interacting. At the end of this session, I'll show you how to download this data as a TSP file and where we'll have the score or the value of their interactions as well. So like I showed in the last session also, how to know which networks, which pathways are involved in this PPIN or protein-protein interaction network. For that, just click in the analysis and try to look at the different ontologies. Okay, so in each ontology, as the data is curated differently, you will get different pathways. But you need to know which pathways you have more confident and you believe that is more true or more accurate. Accordingly, we can proceed with the analysis. So for the timing, we can see the cake and the reaction pathways. So in cake pathway, we can see different kind of pathways, and you'll see the annotation, the description of the pathway, and the most important one is the count in networks. So in cake pathway, if there is 30 entities that belongs to the apoptosis phase, we have 9 proteins that are mapping to the pathway. Also, you'll get the strength of the network and what is the FDR, false discovery rate. This is more important because The less the FDR, more stringent the data. So we have to check this as well. So I choose the apoptosis multiple species, and let us also select another the apoptosis and the colorectal cancer, because this data is from colon cancer. You'll see the proteins mostly those are belongs to the apoptosis pathway. They will be highlighted as per our selection. So I have selected apoptosis. It gives a red color to the node, and in apoptosis for multiple species, and in apoptosis it gives a blue. And you'll see most of the proteins they will belong. I mean they will match as per the apoptosis pathway. And in colon cancer, this is from the same cluster, the same apoptosis pathway that is mostly linked to the colon cancer. That's why it is chosen like this. So now, since we know the biology, see, I'm a biologist and I know which protein does what, and I am quite biased on this. So if you are not from the biology background, and suppose we don't have to do any, I mean, we don't know the basic biology before doing the analysis. In that case, what we can do, we can go to the clusters. So the data is already curated. We know what is the function of protein and which protein is interacting physically with which protein. So we have the details from the string. And what we can do here, we can cluster this. So we have two different options here. One is k-means clustering, which is kind of unsupervised clustering, and the MCL clustering, which is a supervised one. So in k-means clustering, we can choose the number of k or number of clusters, and accordingly it will segregate our data into multiple groups. So if I choose 3 and I'll just apply, we'll see that the data will be segregated into 3 different clusters, 3 different cores. But make sure before performing this kind of unsupervised clustering, you have not chosen any network in the analysis part. Okay, so in the case, like I have chosen before apoptosis and different pathways, but I have unchecked them before performing clustering. So in this cluster, since I have chosen the k-means clustering, I can see 3 different cores and 3 different types of network that I am getting. Okay, and later you will know, I mean, from the analysis step, you will know what are these pathways, and for further analysis also, we can do a manual curation for better understanding. Okay, so at the
Abhilash?
end, yes?
Yes, sorry to interrupt. So does the distance between the two nodes define anything?
Yes, yes. So in k-means clustering, like Deep in previous classes, he has already covered what k means, right? And here also we'll see this is an unsupervised clustering with some, some data. So here in k-means clustering, it will try to segregate or try to, I mean, keep as close as possible on the basis of their functionality. So so I don't know what is there in the background, but you will see the strength, which is basically on maybe the localization of the protein, maybe because of maybe based on the functions of the protein. Okay, so now we'll check while exporting this data, you will see all the values on the basis of that it is exporting. So let us export that TSV file. Okay, you can open this in an Excel for better visualization.
Sir, which file you have exported?
TSV file. So here is your TSP tab separated values, right? Based only one way ages. Okay, so you got this network, you got the nodes. So nodes I mentioned, nodes are the proteins And here you'll see the interaction between FF1 and this TNFR. And here it will keep a the score on the basis of their neighborhood, the phylogeny, the localization, and at the end you will see a combined score. So here for FF1 and TNFR, so they are not interacting that much. So you'll get a combined score of 0.06, but we can just sort this to get a best one. So here it is nearly 1. So else, yeah, so you'll see the interaction between FF1 and this CYCS. Mostly I think it is a cyclin protein. And you will see that there are experimental evidence. So it is experimentally determined interaction. They are interacting physically. And then the automated text mining. And accordingly, it gave a combined score. And on the basis of that, we can determine the ages, how strong their interaction is. So from here also we can manually curate one PPIN using different network visualization tools. Okay, so now this is a string, and using string at the end, what we determined is the pathways. What are the different pathways that are mapped, and what is the strength of the PPIN? So how we can use this in a real experimental plan, real experiment. So for that, what how we use this for our experiment. Okay, so we work on tissue samples. So my project is on colon cancer. We did some protein extraction and performed the LFQ analysis. And after performing the LFQ analysis, we got some proteins. They are mostly significant, and they belong to some pathway that is regulated, that is lipid lipogenic pathway. So what we did is we got the protein that is upregulated in cancer, that is lipogenic protein. So we tried to block the protein, and we looked what are the different pathways it is blocking once we added the small molecule inhibitor. From here, what we got, again we got a very huge proteomic data set. We performed the statistical analysis like MaxQuant and the Perseus, which already we have shown. And from here, we got the list of significant protein, like the significant protein list I showed initially for the string analysis. And after performing the string analysis, here we can see that there are different pathways. So we just block the lipogenic pathway. And after blocking the lipogenic pathway, all different pathways which are linked to the lipogenic pathways were identified, and their turnover, their fold chains were different. So here, after blocking the lipogenic pathway, we got the fatty acid biosynthesis process down-regulated. Simultaneously, at the same time, since the blocking fatty acid biosynthesis will accumulate the free fatty acids and the acyl-CoA, we got the beta oxidation very high. Then accordingly, glycolysis, the pyruvate metabolism, PCA cycle, and oxidative phosphorylation. All the pathways we got from string were quite dysregulated, and accordingly we confirmed that the inhibitor has worked, and it is also changing the physiology of cell in a different way. So as per my hypothesis, I did the experiment. I used the LFQ followed by the statistical data analysis and the string to interpret my data, and later I tried to validate them using another approach of targeted proteomics that we'll discuss in later class to validate the hypothesis. So this is how we can generate data from mass spec, and we can interpret the data to know the real biology that is happening in the tissues or cells or in human body. Okay, so if you have any question, you can ask me.
Yeah, thanks, Abhilash. I think it's important for students to keep understanding and realizing that why we are showing these tools and how they are getting connected, and especially how you can take the data forward from one step to next step. Now, while doing so, we also want you to know the resources available for doing good type of proteomics project and proteomics research. And two of the tools which Deep is going to talk to you, NextProt and Human Protein Atlas, these are community resources available, which are very powerful, lot of information available. I think you should start exploring these tools, and Deep is going to give you some overview of them. but you have to play with these links, and you have to go through some of these website contents, and that will be used for the next class CRISPR tutorial. Yeah, all right, Deep, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, sir. So I think while the course is moving, you guys can understand that how a technical data set which we got from an instrument is kind of we are moving with this technical data set, and yeah, sorry. And finally, from this data, we are started, revealing the biology which is hidden inside the data set. So if I just move you to the workflow, that after doing the max quant analysis, we have got the significant list of protein. Then finally, we have done some of the visualization of the data. In last class, you have learned about the reactome, where you have tried to understand the pathways. And in this class, you are getting more idea about the string, where you have tried to take, for example, a couple of pathways, for example, 2-3 pathways, and you have tried to understand that how these proteins are linked with each other, and the the ages of the protein of these particular proteins are the strengths of the interaction score that generally we get from the different literature experiments and text mining. So now the thing is that, for example, after this string analysis, you find maybe 2-3 proteins which are having a very good interaction with each other, and you want to know more about these proteins. What work has already been done, how the expression of these proteins looks into different tissues, different diseases, and right now, and from here you are again narrowing down your interest, narrowing down your understanding of few proteins, for which there are multiple community resources, as Sir told, are available. Today we will see two important resources. One is Human Protein Atlas, and the second one is NextPath. So Human Protein Atlas, this is the link which is available, but unfortunately there is a downtime of the server is ongoing, which due to which we will not be able to access the portal, but we will have a very good I will try to give you understanding of the portal, and in the next class I will give you another demo, or the hands-on demo on the Human Protein Atlas. So Human Protein Atlas is mainly divided into these many subdomains. For example, Tissue Atlas. Tissue Atlas is the different how a particular protein is expressed in different different tissues of human. For example, brain tissue, then liver tissue, heart tissue. So like this, how the protein is a particular protein in terms of RNA expression data. So whatever data is available over here are based on the RNA expression data, and which also there are some data like the support is also been given from the immunohistochemistry, but mostly the data is from the RNA expression data. Next part is the cell type atlas. So the cell type atlas is the one which is different types of cells that is available, and also it also gives an idea of that how a particular protein expresses in different types of cells. Then the next is the cell atlas. It gives an idea of the cellular organisms that are available. For example, nucleus, mitochondria, all different cellular organisms, and how the particular protein is expressing in different cellular organisms. Then the next one is the pathology atlas. The pathology atlas I've given red because most of the cases we have tried to look into this part, because we always with the help of the proteomics, most of the time we try to decipher the hidden biology that is present in the kind of disease we are talking about. So for example, I have a protein which I want to see how this particular protein is already the RNA expression data is available, and how the expressional differences is there in terms of RNA. So this particular pathology atlas has almost most of the cancer types available. I will show you guys. But as I am currently working with the brain tumor, so I will be taking glioblastoma as an example. And the brain atlas is something where different regions and subregions of brain, for example, amygdala, hippocampus, then caudate nucleus, all these regions and sub-regions of the brain, how a particular protein shows the RNA expression level. And I think the subsidiary work I have showed that how from our lab we have tried to do a brain protein atlas after this, and we have tried to link the human protein atlas and the brain protein proteome atlas from using our portal. Then the blood atlas is something, for example, how a protein is having different expression in different types of blood cells. For example, neutrophil, basophil, monocytes, it is there. Then the metabolic atlas is regarding the metabolism. So all these domains, if the server is available, you can check. Otherwise, I will give a short demo in the next class also. So now coming to the pathology atlas, when you will click in the pathology atlas, you will see that it's written that the mRNA and the protein level expression data from 17 different forms of human cancer is available over here. And if I go and find that, as you can see, all these different types of cancers are there which are available. And for one particular protein, how the protein looks in different cancer, it will give. That means you are getting an idea of the expressional difference of the particular protein in between different cancers. So let's talk about glioma, which is a brain tumor, and it's a very aggressive brain tumor. When you will click over here, it will give a different already the available information that what are the different glioma proteomes are there. Then TCGA data analysis. The most of the data has been taken from the TCGA data only. So so some information, how many patients are there, and unfavorable prognostic genes. So all these informations are available. So if I just select one of the particular gene, maybe for example REP2. So REP2 is a gene associated with the unfavorable prognosis in GBM. So as you can understand, this particular gene is a unfavorable prognosis. So this particular gene should be taken forward, and I want to know, and maybe this particular protein has came as a important protein in your network analysis in your biological pathway. So if I'm taking this protein forward, and I'm in protein atlas, you will find a search of bar over there. And if you're clicking this particular protein, and if you search, then you will get the information about different the domains that is available. For example, this is the evidence level. That means this particular protein is present in a evidence in a protein evidence level, right? Then if you click in the tissue atlas, it will redirect you to the how this particular protein is shown in different tissues. For example, in the basal level expression. Then cell type, pathology, brain atlas. So you can see that for one particular protein, you will get so much array of information that already before starting any kind of research or starting any project, you will have a lot of information for this particular protein. And if I click into one of the summary, you will find that where this tissue is tissue specific. So this tissue is enhanced in the brain. As you can understand, glioma is a brain tumor. So this particular tissue is enhanced in the brain. And then all these informations are available. It is written that it's a prognostic marker in the breast cancer favorable. In glioma, it is unfavorable, and melanoma, it is favorable. So like this, if we go to the tissue atlas type, you will see the how the this particular information is available for the for this particular protein. Then in terms of the different brain atlas, then pathology atlas, single cell. So for one protein, if you start seeing, you will find so much information which is already available, right? So, but as you can, as I told that there's a server downtime is ongoing, I cannot give you a very good understanding, but I think it is overall you got an idea which you can further take it forward, and you can practice if the server is on, right? So for example, this is currently downtime is ongoing. So now, for example, you got a particular idea of a protein, and you want to know more about the protein in terms of the mass spec point of view. For example, what are the peptides are available? Because when you have got so much idea about a protein, and the particular protein is significant, having a biological relevance, so much idea you got. The next thing is that you want to take that particular protein into a targeted level, right? And for that, you have to know that what kind of peptides are available, what peptides you will take for the targeted analysis, and what are the the peptides you will use to develop an assay. So, for example, I was talking about REP2. So I will first take the UniProt ID from the REP2. So I can share for you guys this particular UniProt ID so that it's easier for you. I've shared this UniProt ID. So, and I will request all of you to open Nextprot. So once you're opening Nextprot, you will see there is this is also multi-domain tools. There is a lot of things could be done, but I will restrict my demo towards the only two things. So first, you come to the tools. Okay, and you click over here protein digestion. So once you are clicking into the protein digestion, this particular tab will get open. And you just write, just put nx underscore. So this is a, code kind of thing where nx means the next prot, and just copy paste the UniProt ID that I have shared for the repeat and click digest over here. So over here we have created mixed cleavage 0, minimum peptide length 7, and maximum peptide length 100. So that means we are doing a in silico trypsin digestion to understand that what are the peptides are coming. So it is giving that impossible to get the data because the isoform is not available. It is fine. But the next thing is that the digested peptide for each protease. So as you have seen and understand that we are mostly talking about trypsin. So we will click trypsin over here. That means we are trying to get the tryptic cleaved, peptides. So once trypsin is there, then we will click to the get peptides. Okay. So once we are clicking, then you can see all the tryptic peptides, whatever is present, and came over here. And this could be done with any other standalone software also. But what extra this particular Nextprot is giving, it is giving whether this particular peptides are unique or not. Whether these are the information is available for natural the peptide or synthetic peptide. So all these informations are very much available. And if you click over here in the C peptide view, so a new window will open, and it will give a lot of information about only this particular peptide. For example, out of this, for example, now you want to take these peptide proteins to a next level of the targeted analysis. So you will be selecting some 2-3 peptides that you want to go ahead for the analysis. But obviously your shotgun data will help you in some way. But these particular portals will help you a lot to narrow down your peptide list. So this is the green means natural peptide, and this white color is synthetic peptide. So we will be obviously looking at the natural peptide first. So as you can see, these are the green color peptide bars are giving an idea that where this particular sequence is there in the whole amino acid pasta sequence. And if I come down, so for example, you can see this particular first two peptides are natural peptide. The length is also fine, but these are not unique peptides. So we should be very clear that for the targeted data or making an assay, the particular peptide should be unique, so that that particular peptide should be present only in human, whatever the list of peptides are there. That then only we can tell that this particular unique peptide represents the expression of the protein to some extent. Right. So for this particular thing, I think this particular peptide is pretty good. The length is little big, but for example, this is pretty good because the length is 7, which is a very good number for taking a peptide for a assay, because the assay development should be with a small peptide. Then it is a natural peptide and unique. So if I click over here, okay, so and if you come down, you will find for this particular peptide there is a lot of information are available. For example, this particular peptide, where it is starting, information are available. It is giving that yes, this particular peptide is only mapping to this particular proteins, right? And there's so much information, and peptide atlas human cancer brain sources is there, because this particular protein, as I told, that it's from a brain glioblastoma, so it's from a brain tumor. So atlas, so now you can go to the peptide atlas and see. I think that will be covered in the next class. But from one particular protein, so many informations you are getting, and if you even select any of these, it will redirect you to a new tab, and you can understand more about this particular protein, right? So this is when you have only one particular protein, and you want to go ahead with that particular protein. But for example, now when you have a if you take click into the tool and click in the peptide uniqueness checker, so for this particular thing, so today I will just give you with the example demo set, whatever given over here. In the next class, we will do with a long list of peptide. For example, after MaxQuant analysis, you got a list of peptide, and you want to see which are the peptides that are actually unique, because you need to know the uniqueness of the peptide. So over here, they have some given example. So we can, directly check this particular peptide, whatever it is there. Sorry. So we will just select this, whatever it is there, and we'll paste over here, and we will click check. So once we will click check, so whatever the peptides are there, for example, unique means unique peptide. Pseudo uniques are something which is still, it is mapping with some part of the thing. It is not completely unique, and for any assay development, we should not, encourage to take those peptides. Not unique, as you can understand, these are, shared peptides are there. identical means completely identical. So over there, whatever the list of peptide is there, you can see that this particular peptide is a unique peptide. This is a unique peptide, but has some additional variants are there. So obviously, in first case, we will obviously choose this kind of peptide which has no additional variants or nothing. This is obviously we will not take because there is so much mapping is there, entry mapping is available. So like this, you can use Nextprot even to narrow down a list of peptide for one particular protein, or when you have a big list of peptide which you have got from shotgun proteomics data, like the protein from the protein max point analysis, you can directly put all the peptides over here, at least for the significant protein, and you can take out those list of peptides which are unique. And finally, you can download this data, which will download as a CSV file, and it will show something like this. That this is a yes means it's a unique peptide which you can take. This is no means this is not a unique peptide, right? So in the next class, we will go more deep into this HPA and Nextprot to see how our data can be further taken forward, right? So I think we can start the quiz for this.
All right, yeah. Thanks, Deep, for giving overview. Students, I think you can go through these two portals, Nextprot and Human Protein Atlas. Just play with them whenever you get chance. And these are very interesting resources for you to see, like, from your small experiment data, how much more wealth of data and information you can obtain from the community resources like these. All right, so with this, let's start the quiz today. Shashwati, please share the screen, and we will have the quiz based on the string. All right, good luck everyone, and after the quiz you can leave. Thank you.